Hi, and welcome back to Pokemon Ecology. Today, we're looking at Rufflet and Braviary, as well as the now extinct Hisuian Braviary. This video is hopefully coming out on the 4th of July, so happy 4th if you live in America. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed your day today. Without further ado, let's get into things. First, the elephant in the room. This species is entirely male. In the wild, some animals are exclusively female, typically invertebrates, but we see this in some reptiles. Entirely male, though, is not really possible. When species are only female, they are able to clone themselves inside of themselves, resulting in identical children. This does actually harm the species over time, but it is possible. Due to the equipment down there, this wouldn't be possible with males, resulting in Pokemon professors proposing theories that there exist female Braviaries that would never show themselves, which makes sense considering how reckless and frightfully aggressive Braviary are. It also makes studying them very difficult, because their habitats are very dangerous for humans. To break roleplay for a second, I really don't like the all-male or all-female Pokemon, with some exceptions. In general, it just feels like they were doing it because the Pokemon is innately gendered, in the case of something like Sock, or more relevantly something like Gallade, but it just feels strange to me. There are exceptions though, including Salazzle, Vespiquen, the Nidorans, Burmese evolutions, and Volbeat and Illumise. These Pokemon I am totally fine with being entirely female, and maybe I missed a couple, but otherwise, I'm really not a fan of it. Starting off with the head as always, the plumage atop the adults of the species is very striking, especially in Hisuian Braviary. This seems to be a mating display, but not much can be discerned. Camouflage isn't at play, as their environments are not particularly red or especially blue. I theorize this is to draw attention, specifically being done to pull attention away from nests, fledglings, mates, etc. I'm sure it's also used to attract mates by showing off fitness. To better explain, creating such colorful displays brings forth two major problems for the members of the species. The first issue is that they're far more noticeable. As a result, they must defend themselves from predators far more often than if they had more camouflage coloration. This can represent itself through fighting more often or running more often. The second issue is that the individuals now must eat more food to support the creation of such displays. Pigment and melanin, the chemicals that compose colors and feathers, take energy and nutrients to produce. The increased number of feathers to compose the display also, of course, take energy and nutrients. Therefore, by even creating a display like this to attract a mate, the animal has notably increased the amount of food it needs to consume in order to survive. However, by also making itself easier to notice, the Pokemon now must spend even more energy to run away or fight, putting a great burden onto the typically male members of the species. However, this is often of great benefit to the species' long-term fitness. Males that do not display these traits may survive more, but they then may not court any female partners or may court fewer. Females that prefer these displays are typically going to bear offspring with such traits, provided their partner has them. Males that do have these traits must escape better and eat more often, thus typically are better at escaping and fighting food. This means that future members of the species with his genes are also typically better at escaping and finding food. Do you see what's happening here? Males that put such a burden on themselves then prove themselves capable of handling the burden, and females that prefer such males should create offspring that themselves are also capable of handling the burden, and may even push the limits further. We see that last bit in deer, where female deer seek larger and larger racks on the males, which are harder and harder to support. But if they do survive to reproduce, then they're clearly very capable of survival. Overall, Braviary probably does this. At least Unova Braviary likely does. The same may be the case for Hisuian Braviary, but the colors were overall more suited for camouflage in snowy environments, so the extra colorful feathers above the brow are likely its only display. When males have these elements, females are typically more camouflaged, so predators will target the visible male rather than looking for a potentially well-hidden female. The male will also go out to seek food, while the female stays at the nest. This is why female Braviary are never seen. While normally I would talk about the beak here, I'm actually going to save that when talking about the diet later on. Uniquely, I'll also be talking about their neck, which I don't do very often on this channel. Moving on to the body though, we're going to go in reverse of my standard order here and start with the tail. Braviary have a fan-shaped set of tail feathers. This gives excellent steering and control when flying, which is obviously great to have as a predatory bird. Muscles at the base of the fan also help to push air when taking off, generating thrust and lift to get this heavy bird into the air. This is all very important and will come back up when I talk about diet later on. Talking about the talons now, the large thick claws help when catching large struggling prey. The toes curl and press the sharp nails into an animal and secure them while the bird flies to a safe spot to finish off the prey item and either eat it there or take much of it back to the nest for their partners and their young. The legs tied to these talons are also thick, hinting that Braviary are carrying some pretty large prey around after their hunts. The wingspan of a Braviary is pretty small, especially for their size. Wingspans vary greatly, but with such a large bird, we'd expect to see much larger wings, at least around 50% longer than its body length. Eagles actually have wingspans that stretch to over double their body length. I don't have a specimen of a Braviary, but based on footage we have, it seems to be closer to 30% if we stretched them all the way out. Let's get a closer look. Braviary's body is large compared to their wings, as we just covered, meaning their wing loading, their ability to generate lift, is poor. Their takeoffs will require a lot of effort and may rely on optimal conditions, such as lots of upward air movement to help get them off the ground. Their aspect ratio, the length versus width of the wing, is a bit higher than eagles' common ratios. This means their wings are actually pretty efficient when it comes to gliding and avoiding drag. Keeping this low energy is very beneficial considering how pricey an investment taking off is for them. Due to my lack of a Braviary specimen, I can't really comment on their wing profile, but I can explain it. If a wing is rounded, it's better at lifting from the ground and maneuvering in the air. If it's flatter, it's faster and better at gliding. Considering earlier adaptations, probably the latter, but it could be either. Let me know which you think it is in the comments. The slotting on the wings is large. There's a lot of space between many of the feathers, meaning that at slower speeds, the turbulence is a lot lower. This is very helpful if they're moving slower while carrying something or perhaps plotting an angle to dive at unknowing prey. Finally, the wingtips are long and pointed, meaning drag is even further reduced in their flight. Clearly, this is a big focus for them. Considering how energy intensive their takeoffs likely are, as stated earlier, it makes sense for them to have such a heavy emphasis on cheapening flight while in the air. Finally, with the body, Braviary weigh far more than expected of the average Animalia bird, roughly about 3 times heavier than we'd expect from a raptor of the same size. This is due to the incredible musculature packed into this Pokemon. They're able to carry a car while flying, according to many Pokedex entries. This means that flight is ultimately a lot harder for them than other birds, as it'll take more effort to take off and maneuver through the air and maintain height. For context, Hisuian Braviary is as tall as Skarmory, but weighs only about 15 pounds less. This is partly due to the lightweight armor of Skarmory, but it should put into perspective the sheer amount of muscles on this species. With such heavyset musculature, one obviously needs a great amount of energy and protein, as well as a reason to use it. How does the species get it? What is it that they're lifting? Well, it seems that Braviary's main prey items are the likes of Bouffalant and Tauros. There are others about whom I'll talk in just a moment, but these two are often found alongside Braviary, if not at least nearby. This tracks with everything we've talked about so far. The strong leg muscles help to hold on to such heavy Pokemon while they're thrashing. The muscles all over the body help when actually carrying them. The large fantail helps to take off with the added weight. And their thick necks and large curved beaks allow for strong pecking and ripping at the thick hide for eating or feeding young. Along with these two as a possibly common prey item would be Rhyhorn, whose thick shells are a minor obstacle for this species whose young often eat shelter. Now in all these cases, it would be tough for a Braviary to actually be able to take them down, so the very elegant process of dropping their quarry may be employed here. As very briefly mentioned in the last episode, this is something eagles do to goats. Putting these tough Pokemon on the menu means it's more commonplace for Braviary to do. Remember, there's a lot of protein required to build up and maintain those muscles, so a successful hunt on a Tauros, Bouffalant, or Rhyhorn means a good store of protein and energy for later hunts. Unlike eagles, it's not likely that they'll bring a Rhyhorn, live or dead, back to the nest. What they may do instead is as follows. A Braviary takes off from the nest, soaring level with their cliff homes. Below, they spot a prey item, in this example a Bouffalant. They dive down, pick it up, drop it, then head down and eat more than their fill, and either fly or walk back up to the nest to feed the rest to their mate and young. The excess body left behind also means more carrions, which could be a snack later, but it also means these Pokemon are big supporters of their own ecosystem, giving decomposers and scavengers many meals to eat. These aren't the only Pokemon the line may eat though. Basculin is a certain meal, especially in Hisuian Braviary. Psyduck, Bidoof, and Gligar's lines are all very commonly found alongside both species, but Hisuian Braviary tend to explode bodies of water to hunt, according to older observations, meaning their diet is a lot more focused on aquatic life, I suppose. Rufflet specifically will eat berries, shelter, and whatever else is brought to them by their fathers, but otherwise it doesn't seem that they're too picky. Some Pokemon found around them would actually have defenses that help against Braviary as well. Immediately coming to mind are Mawile and Sandslash, who are well protected due to the very sharp nature of their backs. Now, many of Braviary's entries talk about scars being a sign of success, and scars on the back causing individuals to be shunned. Even Rufflet practice fighting against threatening opponents by fighting with their parents. Not too many great candidates, in my opinion, came up during research, but there are some very threatening Pokemon around them sometimes at least, like Raicc and Salamence. These Pokemon are likely able to reach their nests or attempt to fight Braviary off of their very valuable and expensive hunts, so a Braviary that's able to stand up to them is revered. This actually loops back to the earlier talk about fitness, but this note will be quick, unlike last time. Some lizards can separate from their tails if caught by a predator. The tail will regrow, but usually looks off-color or small. Even though this trait was selected for by allowing greater odds of survival, it's now selected against because it shows the animal was slow enough to get caught. That could be the case here, where scars on the back show a lack of ability to defend, displaying that this particular Braviary would make for a poor partner or flock member. Finally, habitat. These Pokemon live by cliffs and water, rarely ever present without one or the other. I'd stated it during the hunting session just now, but living by cliffs means that they don't need to care as much to lift such heavy bodies in the air, instead being able to simply dive from the cliff. Some of these areas could also form wind tunnels or other aerodynamic quirks, allowing for reduced effort and energy consumption during flight. Hisuian Braviary is now extinct in modern Sinnoh, and that's likely due to the lack of basculin populations in the water. But I'll be talking about that in an upcoming video, so keep an eye out for that. And that was Braviary. Let me know what you all thought in the comments, and massive shout out to my patrons, Superbird, Malon Sale, and Soup Can, as well as all the $1 ones and even the free ones. You guys really make me want to do these and keep doing these. Now I want to anyway, they're all genuinely fun to make, but seeing that people really want to see them, of course I'm going to keep putting them out. And the last video actually saw a lot of YouTube revenue, and with it and your all's financial support, I'm going to be shooting for a video per week. It's going to be rocky at first, I'm sure, but once the rhythm's down, it'll be a game changer. And it's all thanks to viewer and especially patron support. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day. Goodbye.